Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jason, and you're watching Jason Jensen Trains. Today's episode is so exciting and so special to me because today we're going to be building the very first kit from Jason Jensen Trains. That's right, I am releasing my very first kit. Actually, you can go to the website at Jason Jensen Trains right now and order the kit. You can then watch this video and build it along with me. This is so exciting, and before we get started today, I need to thank a few people for making this all possible. First, my beautiful wife Maitri. Her support, her unconditional support for me in this hobby is tremendous, and she built the entire website, and she's going to continue to make sure that the website operates properly for everyone. She's been just tremendous through this entire start of the business. So big thanks to Maitri. And second, I want to thank my son, Will. He has taken my designs and got them into the computer and has spent hours laser cutting the kits. So big thanks to Will. And last but not least, my best friend, Doug from Foscale Models. He has helped me so much. He has been so generous with his time and advice and giving me information on where to get certain material. So a huge thank you to Doug. All right, well, let's start building the first kit from Jason Jensen Trains. Okay, well, here are the two kits. So you've got your front wall, the two end walls, and the back wall. The first thing we're going to do is take a wire brush and rough these up a little bit. Now, if you want yours to look new, you can skip this step. I prefer all my structures to look pretty aged. Okay, next we're going to add nail holes. We're going to be using a pounce wheel, and I bought these from Micro Mart. You get these in a set of 3. So you have small, medium, and large, and we're going to use the medium. And this is what it looks like. First, I'm just going along the edge. Now flip it and do the other edges. And again, if you're going for a newer look, you may not want to put nail holes. I'll show you up close where I'm putting these. Next, I'm going to take my straight blade. You can use an X-Acto knife. I've got one here. And we're going to lift some of the boards. Again, I'll show you up close what this looks like when I'm done. And I may do a little bit less on this one, maybe just towards the bottom. Now, let's go ahead and stain this. Now on a bigger structure, I would definitely cut the walls out and brace them before I stain it. But this is pretty small, and I think if I do a couple thin coats, I think we'll be fine. I don't think the walls will warp. But if you're not comfortable and you think your walls are going to warp, definitely cut them all out and brace them. And I'll show you how to brace them in the next step. Again, I'm just doing a very thin coat. I think there was some red in my brush, so it has a reddish tint on that back wall, but that's okay. Okay, we'll let that dry for a little bit. That was murky brown. Now we're going to use shadow gray. And if you're new to the channel, these stains are from besttrains.com. Next, we'll cut it out and brace the back of the walls. Okay, so my walls did curl a little bit, so I put some weights on them. So if you're building this at home, brace your walls first. Don't do it like I did. Put bracing on the back first before you stain them. Okay, so let's, pardon my reach, let's brace these. So we'll start with the front wall and the back wall first. And we're cutting the bracing the same height as the wall. Okay, now we're doing both kits, so we're going to need 8. Now already I have forgotten a step. I forgot to stain the corner trim at the same time we stained the walls. So let me grab that. It's a 1/16 of an inch thick. I'll grab that and we'll stain those quick. Okay, I have our strip wood for the corner trim, and like I said, it's a 1/16 inch thick square. Okay, while we're waiting for that to dry, we can start to do some painting. Now, before we start painting our walls, you may want to go back and lift some of your boards again. Sometimes when you stain them, kind of flatten out again. So just slightly lift them. This should be fairly easy to find. If not, just lift some new ones. Okay, we'll focus on one at a time. We'll leave those for later. Okay, so on these, we're going to do yellow with red trim. And I don't think I have the yellow I don't have the shade that I really want. So I'm going to mix this bright yellow with this color. It's called light rust. It's mostly the bright yellow, but we're just going to mix a little bit of the bright rust in it. Now you could sponge this if you wanted to. I'm going to lightly drag my brush over the individual boards. Let me do this wall and then I'll show you up close what it looks like. So I'm leaving the edge of the boards, the raw wood color, and I'm actually not going over the nail holes. Now it looks really bright at first, but as it dries, it's not quite as bright. I guess I could zoom in so that you could see it. You can see I'm leaving it really chipped at the bottom. And you can go back in and do it a little bit here and there just to make it a little bit more solid towards the top. So again, try to stay more in the crack and leave the edge of the boards the raw wood. Okay, for the second structure, we're going to do green, light avocado, and then we'll do white trim. And I think I'll make this one a little bit more solid. Well, I forgot to stain the roof trim. Keep in mind that this is the prototype. I have no instructions. I haven't written the instructions yet. So if you're building this at home, stain all your strip wood at the same time that you stain your walls. Okay, that should be all of the wood. Okay, so here are the windows. And it's up to you, but if you want to, take a piece of sandpaper. This is 150 grit. Yeah, 150 grit sandpaper. And in one direction, go over the face of the windows. And this gives it a wood texture. Now again, you don't have to do this. You could even take a straight pin and put little nail holes in that trim around the windows. Okay, I'll finish these up, and then we have to get the door. The door is made up of 2 pieces, and then there's trim that goes around it. We'll get all that, and we'll paint it all with iced coffee. All right, I've painted all the doors and windows with iced coffee. Now we'll let that dry for a little bit, and then I think I'm going to go over it with a light wash of dark brown. Okay, the dark brown was too dark, so now I'm switching to neutral gray. But you can simply take neutral gray acrylic paint and just add a lot of water to it. This is just easy because it's already done. And these washes are translucent, where the acrylic paint is not. You can thin it, but it's definitely not translucent. This just matches more of our stained wall. I'm purposely doing it kind of streaky so that it gives it the look of wood grain. Okay, let's paint our red on our windows and doors in our trim. And for the red, we're using French wine. I'm starting to get low on this, and I need to buy some more. I really like this color red. Let me zoom in for you. Hopefully you can see that good, and hopefully you can see the wood grain that I put in the plastic with the sandpaper. Okay, well, the windows are done. Hopefully you're seeing those good. I think they look pretty old and chipped. Now we'll work on the door. And the door is 3 parts. So you have your main door and the trim on the outside of it, and then the trim that goes around. So I took this out so that we can paint this possibly yellow, and then these get painted red. And let's see, I think I might want to sponge this. So we'll go lighter at the bottom and heavier at the top. So I just cut the acetate for the windows, and I always cut it perfectly so that it fits down in there. Now I take extra thin cement As you can see, I run it across the two sides and then across the top. It doesn't turn the plastic white, and it really just welds it together. Okay, those are done. Okay, next I'm going to paint the inside of the door frame. I'm painting it red just in case some of it shows. Okay, our windows are all glued in. I put little window shades in. I glued the door open a little bit. Zooming in, I see a little piece that I want to trim off. There. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my blade and I'm going to crack that front window. Now we're going to take the color dust, just a little bit, and a lot of water. Let me dry this quick and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, let me show you what this looks like. Alright, now before we glue these walls together, let's take our file and just go over the edges, just to make sure that it's perfectly flat. Alright, now we can take our glue just want to make sure that it's perfectly square by lining it up with the lines on your mat. Okay, great. Now we can paint our corner trim. We'll sponge some red on it so it looks like it's chipping and get that glued on. So I'll quick show you how I do my trim. So I hold it up there and I put my thumb right there for the length of it. Then I start to sponge it and I go heavier towards my thumb and then lighter and lighter and barely any towards the very end. Then I'll quick dry it. Then I'll do the same for the next corner and put my thumb at the correct height. So I go around the top, solid. Now I can start to fade it down. Hopefully that makes sense. It's just how I do it. I used to just take the sponge and sponge the entire piece and then cut it and put it on there, but I didn't like the way that it looked because I wanted less paint at the bottom of it and more paint at the top. So I started doing it this way. Okay, so here are the two roof cards. We'll set this one aside for the other structure. This one we need to paint the underside of it red. Okay, let's get this glued on. I'm lightly just dabbing it, just to spread it out evenly. And you can actually feel it start to get sticky. You want to make sure you get it centered on there. Just hold it there for a little bit. Okay, next we'll paint our trim that goes underneath the roof. And that is a thin piece. Now this, I think what we'll do is take our red and just go ahead and sponge the entire piece. I'm doing both sides because I think I'm going to cut some rafter tails to hang in the front and the back. Alright, next we're going to put the tar paper on the roof. So let's figure out how wide to make the strips. Maybe a little over 3/8. Then once we have a strip cut, we can sort of use it as a template and mark it. So each side gets 2 strips. I'm simply cutting it to length. Now I'm going to take my large pounce wheel, the largest one of the set of 3, and on one edge along the length I'm going to put nail holes. Now we'll take our glue Now I left a crack right along the top because there's a sign that goes along the top. Okay, now we'll take our blade and tear it a little bit, picking at the edges of it. We can even take some sandpaper. Make sure you go one direction. Now we'll take some gray Now I'm taking some lighter gray. Okay, let's set this aside and work on our second structure. Let's see. We have to paint our doors and windows and trim white. Let's do that first. And we'll paint the underside of the roof card and the edges white. We're going to be using light buttermilk. So for this, I'm going to use a sponge. Then we may have to go in with a brush and do some fine detail work on it. But the majority of it will be with the sponge. And we can't forget our trim. Okay, our white is all done. I may do a little bit of touch up on these windows. I like there to be more paint in the recessed areas because it wouldn't chip. It would chip more on the face of the window. Alright, already you can see it's a little bit of a cleaner look than our first structure. Alright, let's get these walls assembled and then we'll glue on our corner trim. But again, the first thing we have to do is take our file. Okay, we want to make sure that it's perfectly square. Okay, perfect. Now we'll cut our corner trim. Okay, now we'll get our roof card glued on. Okay, we are moving right along on this. You can see this is a little nicer, cleaner look than our first structure. On this one, I think I'm going to spray paint a dark gray over this black paper, then cut it into my strips, just to give it a different look. Okay, the tar paper is all done. Next, we're going to work on the foundation that goes under these. These are raised up a little bit, and then there's 3 steps leading up to the front door and a railing. So that's what we're working on next. First, we have to paint all of our wood pieces, or paint them to look like wood, and then they all get glued to this foundation. I'm going to start with iced coffee. Now actually you'll get a sheet that all your detail pieces are in, like your doors, the signs, everything that is this material can be painted iced coffee to start with. This does not have to be painted neat. This is just the undercoat. Okay, next we're going to make a wash using neutral gray. It's a very thin wash. Okay, that's it. I will dry this, and half of this gets painted white and the other half gets painted the red color. So let me show you. So I did 2 long pieces, 2 short pieces, the step stringers, and then 3 steps. Now the rest of it gets the red color. And again, that is French wine. I want to cover those white ones so I don't accidentally get any red on it. On the steps, I'm really just going towards the edge and leaving the center the raw painted wood. Okay, now we take one of the bases and we're going to build this upside down. Let's start with the red. Now again, if you paint these before cutting them out of the main piece, it's going to be a lot easier. We'll just take the white ones off too while we're at it. So like I said, we're going to build these upside down. So lay this flat on your workbench. Then start with the short pieces. They are exactly the same length as your base. Make sure they're on there good and tight, and make sure they're perfectly to the edge. Now we'll do the long ones. And you can put a little bit of glue on the ends, just on the back side. Now the front and the back are both cut slightly longer so that it covers up the ends. Now if you want to put little wood blocks in the corners on the inside, you can if you want to. It's not necessary, but if you have some leftover strip wood from your bracing, you can put those in the corners. So I went ahead and did the white one. So this is what it looks like. So you can glue the structure on like that, or you can flip it upside down and glue the structure like that. Now, if you're going to light your structures, you probably want to cut a little hole in the center before you glue the 4 little walls onto it. I'm going to glue mine like this. Like I had mentioned, we're building them upside down. So I'm going to flip those over. Pick which side you like the best. Okay, next we're going to move on to the signs. So you want to get a brand new blade, either a straight blade or an X-Acto blade. Let's use an X-Acto blade. It's actually my last one. Now, very carefully, start with your circles. Just go very slow, sticking to the outside edge. Don't worry if you don't have a real steady hand, because we'll take some black paint and match up when we put it onto the sign. I'll show you in a second. Now we have our signboards, and we have to glue these on both sides. Try not to get glue on those little finials. It's okay if you do, but okay, one side is done. Now I see there's a little bit of white paper that I didn't trim. So I'm just going to flip this over. Yeah, this is really a good way to do it. Flip it over and just follow the edge of that laser board. Perfect. Okay, now do the other side. You can use a paintbrush to smooth out the glue if you want to. You don't have to get glue all over your fingers. Okay. Okay, it is done. Now, it gets a frame put on both sides. Now, I'm going to paint the frame before I cut it out. And then, you can either use the full frame or cut off one end. I'm actually going to cut off one end so it doesn't cut into the circle. And I'll show you what that looks like after I get it on there. So again, we're going to start with iced coffee, and then we'll sponge on the red color over it. Okay, so both my signs are done. Now, because of the glue, they may want to warp a little bit. So just bend them to make sure that they're perfectly straight. Now, I took the frames and painted both of them with iced coffee first, and then sponged on the red on this one, and then sponged green on this one. And we'll cut those out in a second. First, I want to dirty these up just a little bit. So for the white one, I'm going to use City Dark Dust. So just a little bit towards the bottom. Make sure you do both sides. Now on this one, I'm going to sponge maybe a little bit of rust. So let's start with a light rust color. Okay, very little. Then bittersweet chocolate. Again, very little. Now we'll cut our frames. So there's little tabs that hold it in place. I'm just cutting through those tabs. Now, if you want to, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the French wine, and I'm going to paint the edges of the inside of the frames. And it doesn't have to be solid. It can look like it's chipped. You can do the outside now if you want to, or I'm going to wait until I get it glued on both sides and then paint the outside of it. And I'll show you that in just a little bit. Now, before I glue these on, first I'm just going to hold it up there to see how I want to trim the end off. Let me zoom in so you can see this. So I'm going to cut these this direction. I'm not cutting the end off like this. So again, I'm cutting it this direction. So I'm just cutting the middle out. So dipping my finger in the glue, and then tapping it on the back side of that frame. Now we're going to take our French wine. Part of my frame is lifting a little bit, so if that happens, put a little bit of glue on the end of your blade. Okay, now back to our painting. So now we're going to paint the whole top side of it. We're painting it solid, but if you want to go back in, which I probably will, I'll take the iced coffee with a sponge and sponge the top of it a little bit to make it look like the paint's chipping. And now we'll paint our little finials that are on the top. Now we'll take black paint and go around the edge of the circle. Okay, I just put the green frame on both sides. Now again, I'm just taking the green paint and painting the edges. And then we'll paint our little finials. Okay, now we'll take black and go around the circle. Okay, our signs are all glued on. So I used all the signs. Okay, now let's get our steps glued in place. Okay, for the steps, we'll do the white one first. You have two little stair stringers and then the steps. I suggest using super glue and tweezers. It's going to make it a lot easier. So pick up your first side and put your super glue on the back side of it. Then put it in place. I'll show you where to glue it in a second. Make sure it's flat. So you can see it's the same width as the door. So it's right inside of the trim. Now let's see which order. We'll take the worst one for the very bottom as far as how much paint is chipped off of it. I'm putting super glue on the back side of it. Almost the whole thing, because I just don't know exactly where those are going to sit. Now they're long stairs. You could actually move out those stringers if you wanted to. Maybe put them even with the end of the trim. I'll do that on the next one, just to show you. Okay, so I glued these further apart. Again, we'll start with the worst one at the very bottom, and they'll get better as they go up. Now you can see those are almost right to the edge of the steps. We actually have little railings, and the railings go up just one side. So we'll get those painted and glue those on. I almost forgot, we have one more detail. Each shack has a trash barrel. So let's spray a primer on those and get those painted up. So I sprayed a gray primer on each barrel. Now I'm going to paint one a yellow with a white stripe in the center. Now we're not going to try to cover it all at once, although it does cover really well. So I just put a thin coat on the bottom. Now we'll do a thin coat at the top. Okay. We'll put a bunch inside. Now let's take the hair dryer and we'll do another thin coat. I'll show you up close what this looks like, but I'm not trying to do a solid yellow. It's okay if some of that gray is showing through. Just gives it a worn look. You might not be able to see on camera, but some of that gray is coming through. Okay, now we'll just put a white stripe and we'll use light buttermilk. Okay, now let's add some rust and then we'll be done. So let's use some burnt sienna. Very fine. Maybe I should zoom in so you can see this. It's probably hard to see, but very fine. Now we'll take bittersweet chocolate. Now let's get these glued on to the structure. You want to rotate it and find the side that you like the best that's going to face forward. Then put glue on the back side. Now you can put some trash or sticks, anything in it that you want. All right, well, I hope all of you enjoyed the first kit. I know it's small, it's simple, but I really just wanted to get my feet wet and just learn the entire process. The kits will get better and bigger as we go along. Now for my Patreons at the second and third tier level, I want to offer free shipping. And so on my Patreon account, I will provide a code again for the second and third tier level to make sure that you get free shipping on the kits. All right, well, again, if you would like to buy this kit, you can go to jasonjensentrains.com and order it right now. Thank you all so much for your continued support. I truly appreciate it. And a big, big thank you to all of my Patreons. All right, well, until next time, stay motivated and happy modeling, everyone.